appreciate it. Thank you for a very inspiring lecture. What I thought I would do, I changed my earlier address, is actually focus on the opportunities for the humanities. We're not gathered here because there is a crisis. We're gathered here to see how to give more impetus to what we all do in the humanities. So at Al Akhawain University, the School of the Humanities and Social Sciences is the smallest in terms of numbers. So why do fewer people choose the School of the Humanities and Social Sciences? But it is the school that teaches humanities and social science to all students across the campus. And we have two reactions from the students. While they're at the university, some very much appreciate what they're learning, and others, and you've heard it eloquently from Carlos, and they're saying, I'm doing engineering, why do I have to study history or literature? But with no exception, once they graduate and they go to the workplace, 2 years or 3 years later, they realize the value and they say, I'm glad I took those courses. And I've had students saying, the most useful courses to me now is what I took in the School of Humanities and Social Sciences. So I think we need to be patient and we'll see the results later on at the end. I commend the University of Fugazici for choosing as themes identity, culture, and communication. These are themes that provide us with opportunities, and I will be talking about that in a little bit. Science and technology have been helping us all discover the workings of our world and improving our living conditions. Stephen and I know somebody who chaired a few years ago a national committee in the United States, Larry Faulkner, to find out what helps students become successful in science. And I think just to tell you overall the results in a very, very simple terms, they found out that algebra is the best predictor in success in sciences. I'm glad to say Stephen has mentioned that came from a tradition of intercivilizational contact and came from Arab civilization at some point. Today's major problems, however, seem to go beyond science and technology, to aim at our very being, not only our well-being, but our very being. In order to understand and respond appropriately, we do need to look into religion, into art, values, history, in other words, culture and identity, in order to understand pressing questions today, including, but not limited to, what makes one identify with one group or one community? What makes people choose a group to belong to, fight for, die, and kill for? And this is what we see on a daily basis in the news on television today. What makes people change affiliation, sense of identity over time, sometimes several times in their lives? And what makes one turn against former community members? For our discussion today and in the future, I would like to suggest a few ideas within the perspective of opportunity, not problems. If we look, before I do so, if we look at the world today and pressing issues, we look at Iraq falling apart, we look at Yemen, we look at Syria, but the problems are not limited to the Arab world or the Islamic world. Look at Ukraine, look at Scotland, in a more peaceful way, but they're discovering a different identity, going back to years of history. And look at Catalonia just 2 days ago. And the constitutional problems are still going on today in Spain. So what is the role of cultures, subcultures, and macro cultures in creating and undoing tensions in these and other areas? It is finding oneself in and identifying with certain groups, ideologies, and discourses that determine certain behaviors. Not surprising that certain discourses have been banned in certain democratic countries in certain cultures, despite the freedom of expression, because they do disseminate and encourage hatred and division and the polarization of society. Some business names, I was watching television this morning, have been recently changed after years of practice. ISIS has been removed from a number of companies, although initially it was an Egyptian goddess of love. And now we're changing the name under pressure because of what's going on in the world. So, for our discussion, I'd like to make the following suggestions. One, pursuing the idea put forward by President Barbara Suglu yesterday of engineering a joint program with students going to the 3 institutions before they are granted a degree or a completion certificate. 2, exploring the possibility of a program in applied humanities, same as above or different, putting together areas of strength in each institution. And 3, conducting joint research with the intent to both help understand and propose solutions. Clear areas today are ones dealing with identity in culture and some of the areas mentioned. It would be absolutely useful, in my opinion, if we could have a team from the 3 institutions studying the same problem. There is religion, there is language, there is culture, and looking at it from different perspectives, and it would bring us together with the possibility of proposing solutions. I think we cannot simply stop at understanding. We need to be more practical so that people outside who hold people like me accountable will want to see the efficiency that Donna talked about earlier and the results. What is the result? What is the recommendation? What can we do? 4, exploring the possibilities of the immaterial. And there is a concept going on now of immaterial culture, but also immaterial capital. The World Bank has produced 2 world reports, one in 2005, one in 2010, on the immaterial capital. And the immaterial capital put in the perspective of assessing or measuring, evaluating the global wealth of a nation, of a country. The global wealth is both material capital and immaterial. For developed countries, the immaterial capital represents over 80% of the global wealth of a country. Countries that are emerging, around 70%, and developing countries, it's under 60%. So that immaterial capital, I think, is a great opportunity for the humanities. Why? The immaterial capital has essentially 4 major items. First is the human capital. And our job is to form, to train the human capital. Within the human capital, there is the intellectual capital. And the intellectual capital has been measured by the United Nations in various countries. And I think it's interesting, it's an opportunity for us as we talk about the intellectual. And we've seen reactions, some countries with a bit more importance than others. But in the global wealth of a country, the intellectual capital is extremely important in the human capital. The second is the social capital. And in the social capital, we're looking at the cohesion in the country. We're looking at how society is held together, how they work towards common goals, and how they resolve problems peacefully. And the third is institutional capital. What is the role of justice? How much room is there for expression of opinion, for participation in the decision-making process? And that is crucial for economic development, because that's what assures investors to come in and bring in investment to the country. And finally, the fourth one is environmental capital, and that has been brought up this morning. There are a number of decisions that are taken without considering the environment, and then we have catastrophes, hence the green movement, and hence the importance of weighing it in into the decisions that we're making. The evaluation of the global wealth of a country and the immaterial capital is usually done, again, like for us in the humanities, not just for its own sake, but in order to impact public policy, in order to impact the decision makers and the policy makers. And then, finally, my final suggestion is encouraging and exploring double and multiple majors. I've been impressed seeing some students take in Greek or Latin and computer science. And I think somebody this morning suggested a minor in humanities for all science students. And I think as double or multiple majors, that's what will allow us to actually give a prominent place to the humanities in our education programs. In my university, with its short history, our best graduates are the people who have combined engineering and an MBA. MBA is business, is social sciences, but in order to succeed in MBA, you have to have some psychology, you have to have some sociology, you have to have knowledge of the world to be able to lead a team, to work in a team. So these are some suggestions that I would like us to explore. But for identity, I think we need to remember what is our own identity. And I remember here somebody that spoke after Stephen at our commencement last year, who was a young Moroccan, probably our best cinema producer, Nabil Ayouch. And he began by telling the students, I saw your motto at the university, and our motto is excellence and identity. And he says, while I totally adhere to excellence, I'm not sure about identity for the simple reason that you have it in singular. So you should have it in plural. It's identities. We have several identities. He spoke about himself very eloquently, saying that he was born in France from a Muslim father and a Jewish mother. The Muslim father was a Moroccan French. The Jewish mother was a French Tunisian. And they said, as I grew up, some people would tell me, your mother is Jewish, therefore you're Jewish. Others would tell me, your father is Muslim, therefore you're Muslim. And he said, and when I come to Morocco, they say, you're not fully Moroccan, you're French. And in France, I'm not completely French. And then he said, it took me some time to resolve my own identity problem. And he said, the way I resolved it is through cinema. He says, I started cinema and I came and worked in Morocco. And he says, my solution, the way I resolved the problem is, I realized that I am all of those identities. That I am Muslim, Jewish, Arab, Moroccan, French, Tunisian. So I think the plurality of identity is something that we need to adopt, we need to work with, and I think it will help us move forward. So these are some ideas that I thought as a synthesis from our discussion, but also that I thought are a few things that can be practical in our moving forward in enhancing and taking the opportunity, but remaining pragmatic, keeping in mind the relevance and pertinence to society, without undoing the traditional view of the humanities that they're good in themselves, that appreciation of art, of beauty, of values are important, but we need to move to the other area, and we need to speak to other fields. We need to speak to science like this morning session, but we also need to sometimes approach things with a different method, being pragmatic, taking into consideration the relevance and pertinence to society. Thank you very much.